Good evening, Willows. It's so good to be with all of y'all tonight. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to preach the gospel. For those of you who don't know, I'm Jennifer. I'm not from around here. I'm from the States, and I have the joy and the wonderful opportunity to be here at Willows for the past month or so and for the next month or so, observing how ministry works here in South Africa. Tonight's text comes from 2 Kings. It's in chapter 2, and it's verses 1 through 18. And so if you want to flip there. Okay. Now, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elijah said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Keep silent." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As you live and as the Lord lives, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The company of the prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you not know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Be silent." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. 50 men of the company of prophets also went and stood at some distance from them, as they were both standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the water. And the water was parted from one side to the other until the two of them crossed on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elijah, "Tell me what I may do for you before I am taken from you." Elijah said, "Please, let me inherit a double share of your spirit." He responded, "You have asked a hard thing. Yet, if you see me as I am being taken from you, it will be granted to you. If not, it will not." As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them. And Elijah ascended in a whirlwind into heaven. Elijah kept watching and crying out, "Father, Father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." But when he could no longer see him, he grasped his own clothes and tore them into two pieces. He picked up the mantle of Elijah that had fallen from him and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. He took the mantle of Elijah that had fallen from him and struck the water, saying, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" When he had struck the water was parted to the one side and the other, and Elisha went over. When the company of prophets who were at Jericho saw him at a distance, they declared, "The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha." They came to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. They said to him, "See now, we have 50 strong men among your servants. Please let them go and seek your master. It may be that the Spirit of the Lord has caught him up and thrown him down on some mountain or into some valley." He responded, "No, do not send them." But when they urged him until he was ashamed, he said, "Send them." So they sent 50 men who searched for 3 days but did not find him. When they came back to him, he said to them, "Did I not say to you, do not go?" This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. I think this passage is a wonderful example of discipleship. It's the theme that we've been covering here for the past couple of weeks. Elijah, as many of you know, is a major prophet in the Old Testament. He performed miracles and called out the political leaders of his day. And much like Christ, Elijah called Elisha in the middle of his everyday, ordinary life. Elijah was minding his own business, plowing his own fields, when Elijah came and called him to follow him. Together, the two of them teach us a few really important lessons about discipleship, and I hope you'll walk with me as I discuss several of them tonight. The first thing that they teach me, at least, is openness. I don't think you can disciple someone without this first crucial piece. Elisha and Elijah were not merely meeting for coffee once a week. They were journeying together. Elijah allowed Elisha to be part of his life, not just the Instagram, Facebook version of his life where everything is awesome. No, Elijah opened his life to Elijah, the good parts, the boring parts, the scary parts. It's only at this place of openness and vulnerability can real relationships take place. I think of where I've seen this level of openness here at Willows, and I think I've seen it most clearly in acts of hospitality. I've gotten to stay with several different members of the congregation, and there's something to be said about the openness and the willingness to welcome a complete stranger into one's home, even if it's just for a meal or a night or two. Faithfulness is the next thing that Elijah teaches me. Elijah demonstrates incredible faithfulness in this passage. 3 times in our text, he's offered a way out. He could have stayed in the safety of a city. Elijah even gives him this option. It would have been far easier for Elijah to stay, but he went. I kept racking my brains as to why. Why did he go? And he went because he was following Elijah. And this following does not have an end point. Elijah was on a journey and not a pilgrimage. And what I mean is pilgrimages have these end goals. They have this stopping point. They have this final destination. But journeys are not about this end. They are about the following, the becoming, the being present in the current moment. The biblical character of Ruth gives another example of this faithful journeying. In chapter 1, Ruth is not concerned about where she is leaving from, nor is she focused on a particular destination. She is focused on a human being, and that person is Naomi. Her words are often quoted, and she says, "Wherever you go, I will go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. And your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. And where you die, I will die." Now that is following. This week I've been asking myself, am I on a pilgrimage or am I on a journey? Are you on a pilgrimage or are you on a journey? Because I don't know about you, but often I prefer to be on a pilgrimage. I want a plan. I really want a travel itinerary, especially if it's like time-stamped with everywhere I'm going to be in a day. I want to know where I'm headed. So sometimes I find myself telling God, I'll go this far. I'll go to school, but no further. I'll go to the missions weekend, but please don't ask me for an entire week of my time. I'll go to California, but you cannot seriously ask me to go to South Africa. You see how well God listens to my boundaries. We are all saved by God's grace, but we try to, and so often we respond by trying to offer this faith with limits, but that's not faith. It's only in letting go of these limits, of letting God lead us where our trust is without borders, that we can encounter the full mystery of God. So where are your limits? Where in your life have you drawn the line? Because I promise you, God has a funny way of dragging you over it anyways. Elijah could have stopped at Gilgal, at Bethel, at Jericho, or at the Jordan. But if he had, he would have missed out on the glory of God. Don't miss out on the glory. Another thing that Elijah teaches us is that we have to be careful who we listen to. Throughout this journey, Elijah is questioned by other prophets. When I play it in my head, I hear it in a certain tone. They say, "Do you not know?" I feel like they're being slightly condescending, like they've got the corner on the market of the information on God. The implication is that Elisha is being foolish by continuing to follow Elijah. But Elijah responds in two ways. First, he says, "Yes, I know." But second, he tells the prophets to be silent. He says, "Hush," or quite frankly, "Shut up," and stop following me around, because the verb in Hebrew to be silent is also to be still. So stay there. Stop bugging me. Sometimes the outside world, those not with us on the journey, will attempt to speak into our lives. They say with such confidence that we are wrong, we are ignorant, we are naive for following God. Elijah acknowledges their words, but he does not take them to heart. We see in the text that they are wrong several times about the date of Elijah's departure. It's a reminder to me, we must be careful who we listen to. Elijah, the thing that impresses me probably the most about him is he asks with such boldness. I'm blown away by Elijah's request of Elijah. You see, asking for a double portion of Elijah's spirit is a huge deal. I mean, Elijah was kind of the most amazing prophet since Moses at this point, right? And he goes and asks for a double portion, meaning Elijah is asking to be made part of the family of Elijah. This is typically what the eldest son would receive in the Jewish tradition, 2 portions of the Father's Spirit or the Father's inheritance. It reminds me that sometimes we do not ask enough of God. In Genesis 18, there's this great story. It's one of my favorite exchanges. Abraham is acting as a prophetic intercessor for the people of Sodom. Abraham asks God, "God, surely you who are righteous will not destroy the city if 50 righteous people are found in Sodom." And God says, "No, I will not destroy it if there are 50 righteous people." And Abraham, again, as acting as intercessor, goes on, "But what if there are 45? And God says, "I will not destroy it if there are 45. And Abraham asks God, "But what if there are 40? Surely you will not destroy it." And God replies, "No, I will not destroy it for 40. And Abraham asks again, "What if there are 30? And God says, "No, I will not destroy it for 30. Suppose," Abraham says, "there are 20. And God says, "If there are 20 righteous people in the city, I will not destroy it." And one last time, Abraham asks, "What if there are 10? And God says, "I will not destroy it if 10 are found there." In this exchange, Abraham is reminding God of who God has promised to be and asking God to spare the righteous people. But I've always wondered what would have happened if Abraham had asked with even more boldness. What if Abraham had asked, but what if there are 5 righteous people? What if there is 1 righteous person? It reminds me that not even Abraham could fathom the love and the mercy and the grace of God. It goes beyond our comprehension. Elijah reminds me to ask boldly, ask more than I could possibly imagine God doing, because Jesus himself tells us in John 14:12, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do. In fact, they will do greater works than these, because I am going to the Father. I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father be glorified in the Son. As disciples, we must live in expectation of God doing incredible things. When we follow holy people, we should always get a glimpse of the holy. I think this is how we know we're on the right track. We see the life of Christ and people that we follow, and Elijah saw the glory of God. One of my favorite parts of this story is how completely ordinary it is for the majority of the text. Elijah and Elisha are simply on the move, walking across the dusty roads for days at a time, walking and talking, our text tells us. And then suddenly, the chariots of fire appear, and Elisha got to witness them. The chariots descending and the horses of fire running. Here in this moment, God was not merely picking up Elijah like some taxi service. No, God was also challenging the other gods of that day and of that land, reminding us that God alone is supreme over fire and over horses and over our lives. Elijah got to witness this miracle for very specific reasons. The first goes back to faithfulness. Elijah was a faithful watcher. Elijah had said there would be a possibility Elisha would not see him taken. And Elisha had kept watch, kept looking for God. Elisha had done so for weeks of traveling. He was paying attention. Are you paying attention? The other part of this story that intrigues me is the whole piece about this mantle. Our text tells us when Elijah had gone, his mantle lay on the ground, and Elijah was faced with a choice. Would he take it? Would he put it on? I started looking into mantles, and mantles are a specific type of clothing. And I kept coming back to this story, or how I grew up. I grew up playing dress up when I was little. All I had to do was put on cowboy boots and a sheriff's star, and bam, I was the lone law person in the wild, wild west. I could morph into a teacher by adding a clipboard and worksheets. The next day, I could be something completely different just by changing my clothes. Clothes today still allow me to be completely different things. On game day at home, I put on my blue basketball jersey, and instantly I become a crazy Duke fan. On days when I want to blend in at school, I throw on a t-shirt and jeans, and I look like every other college student, so much so that sometimes freshmen ask me about my classes. And I have to tell them I'm a grad student. Clothing helps us grow into certain roles. I too have stood on the bank of the Jordan River. And when I was there, I picked up a white baptismal robe and put it on. My robe was not just a robe. It was a symbol of the life I was committing to. The robe was way too big for me, but I think that's how it's supposed to be. We are all growing up into this Baptistic life. We are all growing into what God has called us to be. I can just picture Elijah standing there on that bank. Elijah's mantle in his hands. It's a robe too. And maybe it doesn't fit well either. And Elijah does not instantly become the perfect disciple maker or prophet, but he takes it up and he strikes the Jordan, because the journey is not about perfection, it's about the going. And he crossed over on dry ground. How incredible. When he crosses over, the other prophets come running. They want to send out a search party for Elijah. And at first, Elisha says, no way. He knows it would be a waste of time. He did, after all, witness what really happened. But these prophets, the ones who followed at a safe distance, insisted. And finally, Elijah just let them go. There are experiences we have in our faith lives which cannot clearly be communicated nor explained. Elijah had been to the other side of the Jordan. He had seen what they had not. And even though he crossed back over, what happened on the other side shaped him and changed him. Our faith should shape us and change us this much until we are clothed in Christ. So when we cross back over, it is not us people see, but it is the Lord. As the band comes back up to play our final song tonight, I'd like to invite you into this journey, into this becoming, to take up your mantle, to look at it and know it might be too big for you right now, but by God's grace, you too will grow into the role God has called you into. And all God's people said, amen.